welcome everyone to our talk. We are very excited to be here, and we are going to talk a little bit about how we got together as a group, and about a little bit about our common interests and how we are addressing here in this, in this other region in Latin America. So I will start this is going to be like an informal chat, and also because we are thinking still about the things that we have in common as a group and the concerns that we have in this region in Latin America. So as Lizzie says, please feel free to jump in or ask questions if you have questions about it. So I will start presenting, how we started becoming a community, and then Francisco and Giovanni will talk about a particular example in medical argumentation, and then Patricia is going to wrap up where are we going in our studies here. So we started as a group in 2017. We were only 4 people. We were starting our PhD, and it was, Patricia introduced this book to us, and it was like an eye-opener. We were starting our studies and starting thinking about how we could address writing in our case. And we were struggling so much because, we were interested in particular things when we were looking at writing. We were studying writing in linguistically diverse contexts. So for example, I was interested in English as a second language in a context where students' main or first language is Spanish, and during the major or along the major, they have to write in English. They are learning the language, and at the same time they are writing in a second language. So they are going to become English language teachers, and that is the field of study. My other class colleagues, Marietna, she's in the field of education, and in her case, she's also looking at writing, but with Spanish speakers whose main mother tongue is probably not Spanish, but an indigenous language in the region of Oaxaca. And same case with Samuel, who is looking at writing in higher education with Spanish students, with indigenous students' backgrounds, but in his case, that was nursing. So we were looking at writing in different fields, but we were, realized that we were interested in these communities, in these audiences, and that's when we noticed our first concern. So we were thinking like how or in what manners do dominating classes of a society bound the discourse of a given discipline in order to grant or deny access into a knowledge community. We came to see that for these writers, it was difficult to write with the conventions of the university, and probably that was because of their background. We were interested particularly in that social aspects, and as we were studying how to approach writing, we realized that in the region of Latin America, there were a variety of epistemological and intellectual trains when it came to writing studies. We noticed that this is an emerging field, and we noticed that there is a variety of theories or trends, and any of those address the social aspect that we were interested in. So there are many different aspects, and most of the studies here in the area focused on linguistics or in rhetoric and composition, but little of these areas address the social issues like the academic literacy trend. And we noticed Bourdieu was there. So we came to, in order to understand writing studies here, we had to like take distance, and that's the connection with this book that we were reading with Mayton, because we noticed that this variety of trends raised another concern, which is segmentalism. So in this field of writing studies, in practice, having different views of writing creates a tension, because while some educators understand each orientation as a product of a time and space that contributes to cumulative knowledge building of literacy, some others support a single orientation as a definitive solution to the literacy problems faced by society. So as we were in class, we noticed that this variety of trends was created attention also for our students, because they didn't know what trend each of the teachers were using. I must say also that, writing studies here are still in development, and sometimes we don't have like a common methodology or like a common theory. So then we were thinking that we were in this point, we were looking at this idea of epistemologies from the South, and we were in a point in which we noticed that the epistemologies in writing studies were not enough to explain the things that we wanted to explain at that time. So there wasn't any established epistemology, so we were looking for ways. So I want to read this because that's kind of like, explains a little bit the situation. So the South is conceived as a field of epistemological challenges that seeks to repair the damages and impacts historically by capitalism and its colonial relationship with the world. We share here that story of conquer and this clash of cultures between the pre-Hispanic and the new colonial world. And then epistemologies from the South are a set of interventions that announce oppression, value resilient knowledges, and investigate the conditions of horizontal dialogues among knowledges. But again, we are aware of these epistemologies, but we don't share like any common ground. And that's our third concern, which is knowledge blindness, yes. And, tying this to writing studies, we were interested, or how does academic writing at the university looks like? It's difficult to see knowledge when we don't study knowledge per se. So because knowledge is reduced to ways of knowing or power, focuses attention on processes of learning and whose knowledge is being learned and how it shapes these processes and power relationships. So as we probably have read, knowledge itself, its principles and effects are obscure, creating a knowledge blindness. So in the case of writing stories here, we notice that, and we engage in this, interest in trying to make the invisible visible when it comes to our field of writing studies. So this is how we started as a group with a common interest, but then, and we were still only 4 people, 3 PhD students and Patricia, but then we were very connected to the LCT Center, and we took like every opportunity back before the pandemic when we could travel and attend conferences. We took every opportunity to meet with Carl and Jagan and, addressing our concerns. And that's, that bond or that connection lead us to meet other people in Latin America. So by 2019, this first group of students we're finishing our PhDs, but another generation started. So, and it was really interesting because they brought to the picture other fields of study that probably because we are so much into the academia, we hadn't noticed. but they were interested in other topics like rehabilitation as proposed by Alcoholics Anonymous, the process of legitimation of feminist protest, and legitimation of nowhere codes. So here we also notice that the same concern of social problems of injustice, and as a community we committed to examine these legitimation ideas in our context. So I see a comment. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Steve.
Sorry, can I also just make a comment? Just
yes.
what you said there, it's amazing how a small group of people with a real problem, a real focus, and a real quest to address their problem can lead to something quite extraordinary. So just it just really struck me. Amazing.
Thank you. Well, yeah, you know, we still have, because, you know, the first part of our studies was just trying to understand what was going on. And as you will see in a minute, so our concern now it's a little bit different, no? And still the same, you know, segmentalism, knowledge blindness, but we are more into application now. So going back to the topics or our group conformation, so it was like 4 or 5 more students that joined in 2019 with a variety of topics, but same concerns. So, and as I was saying, the center was also crucial for getting to know each other. So in 2020, that was another turning point because of the pandemic. And at that time, I was doing a MOOC for university students, and they were going to enter to the university because we were in lockdown, they couldn't have, like me, we were stopped. And all the process to enter to the community, I mean, to the university was made online. And myself and other 2 colleagues were assigned to design a course of literacy for the different disciplines. And it was like, aha, so we have to design material for 81 careers like medicine, engineering, and etc. So I came to realize that there is none. So it was really hard to find material that address writing in particular disciplines, and that matched with meeting people from Colombia who were doing studies in medicine and philosophy, for example. And again, we came to see that we have the same concerns, but in this case, in Colombia, they are already putting into practice, you know, LCT, and trying to solve the situations that they find in the classroom. So those are very particular examples that they are using the theory already in their context, in their teaching context. Well, then from then on, so more people has joined. It will be long to explain each case, but, and also I don't want to miss mentioning people, but people from Chile joined us in 2022, yeah, we also got to know people from Argentina here through the LCT Center, and we came to talk, and we have been to, I mean, we have had sessions together. And then right now in this year, we have just like starting getting to talk to people from Brazil, and we have worked indirectly. I remember back in LCT 3.5, Marcus, who I think is there, mentioned something like, okay, Brazil is not there, but we are also Latin America. And that's true. But probably we can, you know, that is the purpose one of this session, that we can see what others are doing and how we can connect. And I was also thinking that probably the language, it's also part of the issue that we don't get together as with the other countries. And more colleagues from Mexico have joined the group ever since. So it's like a very well treated, I mean, big group. So if I could just summarize and make, you know, like a landscape of what we are doing here in Latin America. So this is what we have come up with. So in Mexico, for example, there are people working with education, literacy, science for kids, physics, mathematics, and social problems. In Colombia, and this is, you know, the topics that I know from people that I've been in touch with, but probably there are more. And, you know, if someone is out there, let's get in touch. But in Colombia, they are working medicine and philosophy. You know, Giovanni is working with medicine, and also 2 more students have joined the group who have started working with LCT. In Chile, teachers, education in physics. In Brazil, from the things that I have explored and read, chemistry, music, and education, but there are probably more. And in Argentina, English teaching education. As for dimensions, this is what is being used in Latin America. So we have noticed that in Mexico, we have focused more on specialization and semantics. Specialization probably was the first dimension that we use, and that relates to our concerns. No, it's trying to understand our fields, trying to see this relationship between knowledge and knowers, and you know, then it was writing. Mostly the studies were writing, so we use semantics, trying to make like visible some ideas, and you know, trying to implement that in classrooms. In Colombia, they've been working with semantics and autonomy. In Chile, with semantics. We also see that, you know, the work that they've been doing in Colombia, Chile, and Brazil, it's highly classroom, you know, applying LCT into classroom contexts. So in Brazil, for example, they are using specialization, semantics, and autonomy, and they are using semantics in Argentina. So, well, this is what I have for now. Our last question for us as a group is like, we were thinking, or we're always thinking in ways in which LCT helps us addressing these problems in our different fields. And, you know, that's, Giovanni is going to show you an example of the things that we do here and that we discuss in our groups. So that's for me now, and I turn to Giovanni, but of course, if you have questions or comments, you can ask.
So just before Giovanni goes, Vicky, just from a personal point of view, and I think Patricia, you were also one of the very original ones there. It would just be wonderful, you know, what does it feel like, you know, just as a person to be involved in it's like maybe a new adventure into this kind of new area where you are going and like breaking territory, really, in some ways. It's and kind of like opening up spaces for other people to work. It must be quite and I know, like, for me personally, that quite exciting and like, this is really cool, something like that. I don't know. How's your experience of that been?
Well, it's been, you know, when we were starting reading LCT, it was really hard. You know, everything was new. It was back in 2017, and there were many things we didn't understand. In my personal case, understanding semantics and the difference between density and gravity, I was mixing everything up. So I remember in that session, when we met Carl in Boston.
Yes.
I don't know what faces I was doing, but then at the end he said, "Are you okay? Did I say something? Did I explain well?" And I just told, "Well, no, it's just myself trying to understand and realizing that I learned something." And it was hard, and it was only the four of us, looking for opportunities to meet. So when we learned that new PhD students were coming and that they probably will face the same challenges, so we thought, why don't we start, also we started as a study group because we wanted to understand things. And that became like a space, as you said, for other people to join us and going a little bit smoother in their learning process.
Very interesting.
That was
that's how the WITS Hub started as well. Is it a study space for a small group of us just to start, talking and getting more clarity about the tools that we're using? So interesting.
I don't know, Patty, if you want to mention something, because you are also a pioneer here.
Well, I think I'm gonna save my ideas till the end, see if I can find them by that time. But yes, it has been an exciting process. Yeah, and interesting, exciting, sometimes a bit frustrating, but basically exciting and very, very fruitful. So, well, but I was very fortunate.
Can I ask Andrea, you've put some things on the chat about how, maybe this has kind of supported you along the way, this kind of pioneering and very, very inspirational work that Vicky has been speaking about, and Angelica, as you as well, I think have been those kind of young PhD scholars coming in who've now come into kind of an established or supportive network.
Well, yes, I'm part of that second or maybe third generation of PhD students who came into the theory without knowing anything. I mean, when I started my PhD, I was introduced to this theory and it was challenging at first. I mean, because I didn't have any background about this and it was really new, and how could I apply this to study how feminist protests are legitimized or challenged in a Mexican environment. So, I mean, and honestly, I am not really sure that, well, it's just my self-doubting that just doubting that I'm doing a great work. But we were welcomed by this community, and that really helped a lot. The international and the local community, the Latin American community. I mean, everyone shares their knowledge, their work, what they are doing. So that really has helped a lot, because sometimes academia can be very rigid they can be very close. So to know that we have a space to study freely and say, hey, I have this new exciting idea and I want to talk with you about it. So that really helped a lot. And that's pretty much what I think that really helped us to pave the way for many people who will come next.
And it was awesome to see your work in progress, both in the roundtable that you did with Angelica and then again at LCT4.
Yeah, you'll see more of us. I mean, we are, just a warning.
Thank you. Thanks.
So maybe can we give the word to Giovanni?
Okay, thank you. Good morning for everyone, and good night in Australia. Good morning here in Latin America. And I'm gonna share my screen. It's okay?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Okay, I turn off my screen because my internet signal is not so good. Well, greetings for all, and we are Giovanni García Castro and Francisco Javier Ruiz Ortega. We have worked together with the LCT Latin American group, especially Mexico group. For us, it's very gratifying to be in this space presenting part of our research that is part of my PhD, my doctoral thesis. On this occasion, we present a preview of the results and an analysis using LCT for multimodality analysis in clinical argumentation, especially. And especially in the use of the dimensions of autonomy and its tools. For me, it's especially motivating since we have been shaping this project for nearly four years, and being able to be here with you at the Roundtable is already an achievement and an honor for me. For this presentation, we want to emphasize the application of LCT in autonomy tools and the analysis of intentionality in the promotion of clinical argumentation. From the multimodal perspective of argumentation, it's recognized that speeches follow a process that transcends oral and written language, including gestures, graphics, body postures, demonstrating through their use the development of complex skills of thought. The study of multimodality has been gaining relevance in didactic research, recognize that in the natural setting of school scientific constructions, the interaction between the actors involved necessarily implies recognize the multiple language used by one and the other to construct and represent meanings. We place this proposal in the field of LCT, considering argumentation is an epistemic practice that is to build knowledge. To address the problem, we want to do it by trying to answer some questions. First is why research of clinical argumentation? We have taken into account three possible fields of contribution and development. First, to improve professional standard, like handling complex situations in clinical problems, or take a critical look of health disease phenomenon. Second, for critical thinking development. For example, to improve problem resolutions and the use of knowledge in a specific and complex situation. And finally, for building science in the classroom. For us, the teaching and learning process is mediated by language. Another question to answer is why research on argumentation and multimodality in health science? That is built by multiple ways, multiple language. For example, other modes are used in addition to oral and written language. Finally, applies to discursive communities when there is a specific language of the disciplines. This leads us propose a general objective to work is to understand how the intentional use of multimodal resource by medical professors is related to promotion of clinical argumentation. And a specific objective for this presentation is to characterize the multimodal resource used by teachers and their intended use in promoting clinical argumentation in the classroom using the autonomy dimension of LCT. For this, we must place ourselves in the theoretical perspective on the proposed categories. The first is argumentation, and precisely in argumentation in science didactics, we understand the argumentation like in a cognitive linguistic ability that has been approached from different trends. Additionally, it's also considered school science construction promoter from the perspective of ability to build points of view and like an epistemic practice. Regarding multimodality, we start from the fact of natural scene of the school scientific building, and the language is a mean of legitimation of knowledge. Recognize the multiple and specialized language in the science classroom. At the present, the legitimation code theory has been gaining strength as a construct based on a set of concepts known as dimensions, and as a tool that make it possible to analyze not only the contribution of each language of the assessment of argumentative process in the classroom, but also as a tool to explore different organizing principles that underlie the practice, disposition, and context of a particular discursive community. In this case of this research, we wanted to incorporate the theoretical and methodological advance of the autonomy dimension of LCT, trying to identify the movements that occur in the argumentative exercise that teachers propose in the classroom, and apply the autonomy tools to the analysis of the intention of teachers, as well as in the conceptual focus or which medical argumentation is based. For the methodology, this research will be carried out with medical professors who will be videotaped while promoting clinical argumentation through the use of multimodal resource. Then this course analysis will be carried out looking for the characterization of multimodal clinical argumentation scenarios. For example, use of resources like oral speech, graphics, resource, gestures, or models. A training group in clinical argumentation was formed with these teachers, and data was taken before and after. Carry out a process of reflection on the practice in the classroom. We call this moment 1 and moment 2 respectively. For the analysis, we built 2 specific translation devices, one for positional autonomy, another for relational autonomy. They were adapted for this research. In this case, excuse me, well, in the positional autonomy, we gonna explore the intentionality. In the relational autonomy, we explore the focus of argumentation. Oh, it's, yeah. Then, and in creo que excuse me here. This is the device, specific translation device in PA, in positional autonomy. At the top, this is the level one is intentional and unintentional use of resource to promote clinical argumentation. The level one in the up is intentional and the down is unintentional. And the level two, we build the categories in the up is associated. The use of multiple modes of language has the clear intention of promoting argumentative space in the classroom. Then is directed, and then is unnoticed, and then in the down is less intentional, is not associated. This is our specific translation device for PA, and for a RA, relational autonomy, is in the horizontal line. In the top is in level one is in focus, and in down is unfocused. In focus is use of elements of a conceptual order strongly related to the theme in which it is intended to argue. In the unfocus is use of language that express a little conceptual relationships. Is unfocused is in the down, and in focus is in the top in the device. I don't know that is understand.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Mhm.
Can I
Okay.
ask one question though, just in terms of what your object of study is, and that is, are you looking for places where the facilitator or the doctor who's in charge or who's teaching is giving the students a chance to argue about what the diagnosis could be? What is the argument about?
Yes, the argument is based with in diagnostics and treatment of the patients. The students going to change ideas, and in this the teacher is must be promote this space of argumentation in classroom.
So it could be
And
argument about diagnosis or argument about what the best treatment method is.
yes, in different areas.
Okay.
For example, in diabetes and heart disease or stroke. For example, is not only topic. It's different topics. Depends of your practice in the classroom, and depends of they are different professor and different topics in the classroom. Yes, Doctora Patricia?
They'll bring different case studies, but all of them, you want them to argue about the diagnosis and arguing about the treatment.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. We validated these devices with first with a pilot test, and then in discussion sessions with experts. In this case, with the LCT Latin American group. For the analysis, video recording and transcription were carried out in an instrument. In this format, the argumentative scenarios were transcribed and evaluated according to their PA and RA with a plus or minus sign. In this case, we can see the format, the instrument for the analysis. We seek to identify the argumentative scenarios through the shares when locate them on the plane as defined in the specific translation device, and identify possible autonomy tours according to what is proposed for the dimension of autonomy. Okay, the results is preliminary results. First, we must say the multiple models are used during clinical argumentation, and teachers use this resource in different ways. At the beginning, they were not used intentionally for the most part. Then they incorporate them more conscientiously. Gestures mostly support oral discourse, and other resources such as graphics, anatomical models, text appeared as the study progressed. We are some example of the video recording and the categorization of the resource. For example, in this slide, the teacher is explained in a table, in a board. She use graphic resource or writing text, and she use oral resource. For example, in this slide, the teacher use gestures, iconic written gestures for explain or for promote argumentation in the students. For the moment one,
Sorry,
yes.
Can I ask a question? Do you differentiate between, you've got there in that slide gestures, but pointing to text. So are there times that would using a diagram or using a model or using a recording of a patient telling about the symptoms or something like that, would that also be graphic resources?
Yes, graphic is dibujo, ¿cierto? Draw resource. Eventually, the teachers take the board and write a text or drawn graphic or a scheme in the board. This is for us. This is our resource to use the teacher for explain or for promoting a dialogue with the students. Is clear? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, but if they're writing text and they're using a diagram, you're not distinguishing between that. It's the same.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. For the moment one is probably to the intervention of the teachers. This is the moment one, and we want to show in this moment who is who the teachers use this resource for promoting argumentation in classroom. This is to show this analysis we placed here. We show this analysis. We place the oral intervention in red on the plane, as well as the multimodal support resource in the colors proposed for this analysis. For example, gestures, iconic metaphorical gestures, or iconic gestures, the ictic is in different colors. For example, metaphorical gesture is in brown, models is in purple, text is in pink, but oral intervention is in red. In this, this is a plane of autonomy tours, autonomy code, and this located in this plane the interventions of the teachers on intervention of the students. Here is an example of an intervention where argumentation is generated with its corresponding coding according to the PA or RI. With this, we proceed to locate the intervention in the proposed autonomy plan. This is the professor one. We see how most of his intervention are located in the lower and right quadrant. Obviously, they are not only located there. It is the place with the highest concentration. The intervention oscillates in the adjacent quadrants. The teacher, this is the teacher too, places most of his intervention is in the lower left quadrant, and more deictic and pragmatic gestures are used than any other. And this is the teacher 3, also places this intervention in the lower right area, evidencing that at moment 1, the interventions do not exceed the horizontal plane. That is, there is little intention of the part of the teachers to promote argumentation, despite the thematic focus not is so far from the right end of the plane. If we see it in function of what is proposed by Professors Mayton and Howard in their publication, Taking Autonomy Tours, where ways of understanding tours are proposed, we could place this exercise in a round trip, back and forth, or return trip, yes? Where the purpose and intention of the teacher is maintaining a little intention, but the argumentative focus move from right or to left, right to left. For the moment two, great changes are observed in the autonomy planes, finding greater intention of the teacher. That is, the autonomy of position is greater. Likewise, the conceptual focus remains very strong and close to the right side of the plane. That is a greater relational autonomy. In this case, in addition to oral resource, more elaborate gestures such as metaphorical and iconic are used. Likewise, graphic supports such as
Giovanni, excuse me.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
I think we just jump in. I have a question. What would you say is the exotic when it comes when what have you found that is the exotic in clinical argumentation?
What is it? The topics?
No, the exotic, de lo exótico.
Ah, de lo exótico es lo de abajo a la izquierda, ¿no?
In moment 1.
Okay. The exotic is unfocused argumentation and unintentional use of resource of teachers. It's mean the teacher is not conscientiously of the use of this resource because is not prepared, is not the use is not intentionally. Your proposal is not promote the argumentation. Is only explain this topic, his topic especially, and the argumentation is out of the topic specific. For example, in the teacher that we see in the past slide, she tried to explain on a stroke and accidente cerebrovascular. Yes, struck.
Oh,
But is your dialogue with the students is out of the focus of thematic focus. In this case, is in the right, no, in the left, in down. This is exotic, for example. No sé si te respondí la pregunta. Bueno, sí.
Since
Okay.
you shared both codes, I won't jump in, okay? But it's
Yes.
fine, it's clear. Thank you, Giovanni.
Okay.
Mhm.
Giovanni, can I just ask, so when you're looking at intentionality and you're deciding whether something is intentional or not, does that come through the interviews? So are you watching the video recordings back together with the participants and saying, did you think about that? Did you plan that? Did you mean to do that? Did you not mean to do that? Are you deciding intentionality together with your research participants?
Yes, absolutely. It's in this is
Okay.
it
Yeah.
says yes. Okay. Yes, it's I understand. Okay. In this case,
Giovanni, you can respond in Spanish and Patricia. Perdón, Giovanni, puedes responder en español y Patricia.
okay. Okay.
Ajá. Sí, como gustes, ¿eh? Como gustes. All right.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. In this case, in the moment 2 in teacher 1, for example, more elaborate gestures such as a metaphorical and iconic are used, likewise graphic supports such as schemes and diagrams. For example, this is an schemes. The teacher write in your book, in your notebook. Take your notebook and write concepts and make this arrow, for example, this arrow with another color for explain or for try to motivate these students for speak in the classroom. The teacher too has less intentionality, but the thematic focus is maintained. In this case, there is use of writing text and elaborate gestures. Looking this teacher is writing in the board and try to explain this with gestures. He make an effort, especially for explain your topic. And Professor 3, this is a 3. In the slide say 2, but it's a 3. Agrees with the others in the use of a greater amount of resource and in the generation of our argumentative space that are more related to the topic to be addressed. Here is an example of intervention of the moment 2. In this case, and in view of the fact that the movements coincide in the 3 teachers, we could reach the conclusion that for moment 2, there is a stationary movement located in the upper right quadrant. That is a case of stay, or for us is in a case of stay, movement in only one quadrant, in this case in sovereign code. For us, possible contribution to teaching of medicine for the application on LCT, for one side is theoretical apportation, theoretical contribution, new ways of approaching aspect of teaching, learning, inclusion of new use of multimodal resource in the classroom, in medical education. An approach to the multidimensional teaching is as a means for the collective construction of knowledge. And for another hand is methodological use of language in the middle of a particular community, in this case, a medical community. Use of LCT in analysis for us is a new topic for research in medical research of and the didactic research. So, and co-creation of meaning in a particular academic setting, and for us is an innovative factor in health science education.
So can I jump in there, where I think also this could have really useful implications. You know, I'm thinking in terms of teacher education. We want our students to be, when they're teaching, we want them to be thinking all the time about what's working or what's not working. So they might have an intention to do something, and they find in the explanation that perhaps they need something that they hadn't thought of before. And so then they quickly just draw a diagram that was unintentional, or they do a movement that was unintentional, or so on. And so that could also be a way of really identifying kind of reflection in practice, which I think is absolutely fascinating. So, you know, it might be that there are implications here beyond the health sciences.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, is a reflection in self practice of the teachers.
Yeah, so it would be, that would probably be a shift between introjected and exotic, where they're thinking and they're bringing in things, they're keeping on purpose, but they're bringing in things that they hadn't planned to, because they are seeing that the students are not understanding or whatever. So I'm just saying, I think it's really, really an interesting way of looking at thinking in practice and what you need to draw on to get your purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And can I ask, so what was there in looking at this, because obviously we know from other studies that, for example, the exotic code is not necessarily a bad space or a terrible space, that sometimes educators, students move into the exotic code and back out for good reasons and so on. So is your study, or was your study, connected to pedagogic effectiveness, to understanding, to students coming up with the correct diagnoses or the correct treatments or whatever? Is there any connection between the autonomy tours and the intentionality of the teachers and then the outcome of the classes?
Yes, a ver, aquí creo que lo voy a tener que decir en español, doctora Patricia.
Okay.
Sí, para nosotros es muy importante reconocer el papel del profesor en la generación de escenarios de pensamiento crítico. Hasta ahí.
Okay, for us it is very important to acknowledge the critical thinking of our professors. Is that right, Giovanni?
Yes.
Mhm.
Entendemos que esa construcción es progresiva, pero
We
que debe ser,
understand that this construction is progressive,
pero debe ser consciente por parte de los profesores.
but they must be aware. Teachers must be aware of this process.
Los tours de autonomía nos sirven o nos han servido para entender cómo el profesor realmente aplica sus estrategias de manera intencional y consciente.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so autonomy tours have allowed us to see how the teachers apply this intentionality, these tours, in a very conscious manner. Did I catch that, Giovanni?
Yes, it's okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Doctora Patricia. For conclusions, is education is general, is a social phenomenon, and therefore it is susceptible to be analyzed with the confluence of different science and different disciplines such as sociology, linguistic. In this case, is didactics is our field of research. And LCT is a theoretical construct applicable to educational science, and in this case to argumentation in medicine. And in third, the autonomy tours denote important and substantial change in teaching's practice, especially the intentionality and awareness of teacher of medicine. We consider that this exercise contributes from a theoretical and methodological point of view to research in clinical argumentation, taking the concept of LCT and the code of autonomy specifically. And we hope that this work contributes to the construction of new perspective and approaches to LCT. For now, we are sure that this has been of great value for this work and this analysis proposal. Thank you so much for all. Thank you.
Really interesting project. Thank you.
Thank you. Bueno, doctora Vicky, creo que terminamos esta parte.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. So, yeah, let's move on to the last part of the presentation with Patricia.
Okay. All right. I hope not to. I hope I don't waste any time with these things of sharing screen, Vicky. So I'm going to go right ahead and try to see if I can share the screen. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. All right. And I will try to be as efficient as I can and try to be very brief about it, because most things have been said, right? So if you, can you see this? Please, can you signal if,
Yeah,
can you?
yeah, we can see.
Okay. So thank you, Giovanni. It was such a great presentation. I loved it. And I forgot my role as translator while I was listening to you. And so maybe I wasn't as efficient as I should, but you didn't need me. So that's great. So I'm going to change the focus from the specific problems that in this region we've been trying to address. And so my focus is tying the macro and the micro through LCT, right? And so you see, this is basically been my concern, and because there's such a wide range of topics, so such a wide range of problems, see? And so the key thing is for a change of mind, a change of state of mind that allows us to make sense of this problems that seem not to have solution. So I was very happy to see Vicky's photo when we were in Boston. I think it was 2018. And the first thing that Carl said to us is, all right, you have to embrace complexity. And so I took that slogan back with me, and I've shared it often in our academic community and said, oh, okay, you guys, we have to embrace complexity, see? And keeping that in mind, see, we also take into account this premise that most social problems of our region, whether you're talking about the north, such as Mexico, south of the border, from the United States to Chile, to Argentina, all the way down, you know, we have problems of education and literacy. And Vicky pointed this out because we have an epistemology that is concerned with the historical changes. But of course, if you think about it, that is the case with most parts of the world, right? So it's part of human nature to, you know, impose and teach and construct and to have power relations that really respond to the human condition. So how do we deal with that? That's what we meant, or that's what I think of when I think about complexity. See, so it's a big, really big complexity. So here in this community, well, Vicky, you know, it has done a great job of bringing us together, and in order to collaboratively construct a perspective. You know, this doesn't mean that one size fits all. It's just we see it as a state of mind, as an approach, as a way of thinking, maybe, okay? Excuse me. Okay. So we believe that the foundations for change can be arrived through pedagogy, education, of course, research. And if we try to sort this out, we're talking about a huge problem in this region of social practices of exclusion that reflect on policies of education. There are great problems dealing with violence, social violence, and institutions have a way of dealing with this violence in ways that usually don't put an end to violence, but work towards personal strike, right? And you can see that in most of our countries where social injustice is tried to, you know, sort of balance out with policies of law and order. You see, this insight, you know, doesn't just happen, you know, this is through talk, continuous talk with doctoral students, you know, that portray this complexity, and we share it and we talk about it. And it hadn't worked, you know, when we just followed this paradigm and then your research will come together. Well, most researchers through different years, decades, you know, are not very happy with these results. And so this is how LCT has provided a great insight for us to work on. And so most of the studies of the research and where I've been, you know, honored to participate, grab a hold of the problem through the quadrant or the quadrants of the specialization plane. And when we explore the specific constituents of knowledge codes in this context, many things come to light. And so, and this is where we start to sort out problems, you know, in the specialization plane. Most teachers, you know, most of the practitioners in the field of education, pedagogy, immediately go to the semantic plane in order to see how is knowledge constructed. What do we need to do in the classroom in order to effectively promote or make it possible for change to occur. Okay, this is what I've seen through the years where we've approached or where we initiated this adventure. And then some researchers have focused on the elite codes. And in doing so, they recognize and acknowledge, what I mean by this is they become conscious of cultural values that provide the basis for legitimation. Okay? And it's interesting to watch how in the process of research, values and things that, you know, were unconsciously assumed come to light. And it is a very curious thing. Of course, you can see it, you can check it in history, that the people who have had access to, let's call them privilege, education, you know, knowing about the world, are the first ones to demand change. And so many times they initiate the protest. I have seen this progress of slowly coming to terms, slowly realizing, see, who creates protests, why, and how, okay? And so how they, the process of protest is becoming legitimate in the context where Andrea has done her research. And the main question I believe is that she has been addressing is how does alignment or misalignment occur? But then we come to the knower codes that we started out by believing that these were the simplest ones, the ones that wanted change. Sadly, many times resistance to change comes from the knower codes. You know? Members of a community are set on practices and saying, this is the way we do things, right? And sometimes, you know, the resistance to change it has to be approached. Angelica has done this process very pointedly, very specifically examining the knower codes of the leaders of Alcoholic and Anonymous, this organization, in incarcerated conditions. So you see, just sitting there, placing the eye there and going back and forth from the knower codes to the elite codes. And basically, this is what is going on there. But I haven't seen the way in which she grabs or she maps out this transition. And I don't know if she might be in agreement with me. But in other cases, in most cases, in research, the strategy has been to you know, collect all kinds of texts, pamphlets, manifests, stickers, you know, in order to get to know the codes used by the knowers. Now that has been a very gratifying strategy. I can say that. Okay. Okay, so our work, especially Vicky, you know, she has led us to look at the quadrants of the semantic plane and in understanding how learning, you know, becomes effective in the classroom. That has also been wonderful to watch and to trace and to apply in different contexts, online as well as presential, and of course in writing, specifically in academic writing. We have approached the plane of autonomy, but it is a very difficult plane to study. You know, the quadrants. You know, they can be deceptively simple. For example, the notion of target and how to trace the target as emerging from data brings to mind what Carol often says. Target is the center of the plane of autonomy, the big scale or small scale, right? And this is something that we need to work on, the target. You know, what is it exactly that we are aiming for? How can you grasp that? So that leads us to the recurring problems. You know, the issues such as how much theory to use in view of the data, right? And you know, many times I've had talks with researchers when they say, "Oh, okay, why don't we just draw out a methodology and just stick to it, and you know, just a procedure, and let's continue with that." But it's not that simple, right? And especially when the disciplinary boundaries sometimes can be very, very harsh, very explicit, very rigid. But other times, you know, they tend to diffuse. But academics, especially in our community, I think Andrea mentioned it, we need to keep within the boundaries of each discipline. You know, that is an issue that we have to constantly revise. So I think I've been very brief on this, very general. That's the good thing about being the last, you know, you don't have to stop very much and explain exactly what you mean, because most of the time I don't have it clear myself, you know. But the only thing I do have clear in this experience working in LCT is the collective, the collaborative nature of this project, of this state of mind, you know. And we're all aware that it is a work in process, and for us in or for me at least, it is a constant process of tying in the macro and the micro of all the problems, the dynamics of our region. I think that I'm going to finish on that note, and I'll be happy to not to answer questions, but to think about your questions, because I'm not sure I have the answers completely clear. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, thank you very much. And well, I think we are almost on time, but if you have any question or comment, we will be happy to share or to discuss.
I think that for me, the idea of the complexity and holding on to the complexity is very, very much part of what where I found LCT to be so useful, because it gives me a way through that complexity. You know, and there were, I think in my early days as an academic, I would write a paper, and then as I was about to submit it, would say, there are 2 papers here, actually, and then I'd split, and then I'd develop one, and then I'd split it into another 3. And so I've got probably 27 half-written papers, because at that point, that complexity overwhelmed me. But what I think you've done and broken down really nicely is showing us the pathway through the complexity, and that you don't have to look at everything all at once in a way that's overwhelming. You can actually, you know, look at the micro, look at the macro, look at the links, look at this part of the micro, and so on. And I feel that, you know, that's been quite an adventure. So just a comment, not a question, just a comment.
Yeah, we can leave the questions, you know, to think about them, you know, through weeks and semesters and cycles and school cycles, you know, well, that's the way we've been working with it, with the LCT. Of course, trying to complete the projects that we set out to do in the specific times and ways in which they are required. But of course, this is something that you know, we have to go back and rethink about what we assume to be true at the beginning sometimes, and sometimes, you know, just be happy. Yes, it's been verified. It's that way. How you can approach it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think also sometimes
Mm-hmm.
no findings is a finding in itself in some situations.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we don't need to look there anymore. There's nothing to be found there, right?
Or sometimes when you find something that's totally unexpected, or anyway, that's really,
It's fun.
anybody else think that they'd like to
Right.
ask or comment?
May I say something? Yeah. Yeah, I think I have a minute. I've been thinking a lot about, well, what we're saying and what we're trying to do. And I apologize in advance for this commentary. I mean, I know that Dr. Patricia will not be very happy to hear this. But when I talk about my research in forums that are not LCT, I feel a bit like a salesman, like a saleswoman, I mean, because there are established authors in feminist theory and feminist research. And it's not very easy to introduce LCT, so I have to be a bit like, so there's this new exciting theory from this author called Mayton, and I want to talk about what the things that I've been finding that are very exciting. Because, for example, when I'm talking about feminist protests, what's really interesting is that, for example, women actually have the right to protest. They have the right of speaking. They have actually the right to speak their truth, but within very limited boundaries. And there are ways of knowing, and there are ways of enacting knowledge. And there are legitimate ways of enacting knowledge in mass media, which is actually my topic of research. And I believe that I wouldn't have been able to find this or come to this way of seeing my research if it wouldn't be for LCT. I mean, just to know about a problem, about established historic problem that is women issue in Mexico, if it wouldn't be because thanks to LCT. New ways of seeing an established historic knowledge, an historic issue, is what I mean.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. And I guess that's what you know, joins us as a community, because we have that in common. So LCT has helped us to see the things that we hadn't seen before. No? So we are just on time. So when maybe we have last minute to Ruben, and then we can wrap up.
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Patricia, for your presentation. And my question is, because I live in the region in Argentina, and I identify with the topics you are referring to, the social problems such as education and literacy as a big issue in the region. But my question is basically about, if you work in your research, you work with the dimensions, I mean, in an integrated manner, addressing this issue of, of education and literacy in relation to social practices of exclusion or violence or injustice, or you work with the dimensions, you focus the dimensions of semantic specialization and autonomy for the different topics separately. And am I clear?
Yes, I believe I understand. Let's see if I did. Let's check on this, on that. You see, I'm still in, I personally am still set on the specialization frame, or excuse me, plane, because, you know, many things can be explained in that plane once we sort out what we're talking about, right? What you analyze a situation, you read a text, you know, various manners. You see a movie, you watch a movie, and then you can see what's going on here, you know. And so with time it comes out and it says, okay, this is what prevails. This is what's important, what's salient. And if it is a problem of education that is, like, for example, I remember Marievna's work. It was fascinating when she found out. He says, this is what we're teaching again and again, and they don't get it. How can we get out of these dynamics? So she went on to the semantics plane together. I think Vicky played a major role in this, and then so they clarified what was going on in the classroom. That was wonderful, a wonderful experience. Other researchers, we were not. These research, their authors are not here today. But, like, for example, they live in the autonomy code, a plane, excuse me, the autonomy plane, and they explain the wonders of writing, creative writing, not academic writing. And so the exotic becomes a quadrant, that it's the source of inspiration, and they're using that in order to promote literacy. So what I'm saying, Ruben, basically is that for me, this is how it works. If you get a grasp of the specialization plane, then it's almost not, of course, not automatically, not immediately, that you realize what dimension would be worthwhile to explore. And of course, they're all related, but there's something that emerges, And for me, this emergence, maybe when I get to the constellations, I'll find that the real indicators are there. But for now, this is how it works, because what I take off from the social dimension, from the macro. This is a tendency that I do, but it doesn't mean that it's the right one or it's the only one.
Thank you, Patricia.
I answered. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. Lee, do you want to say something to wrap up? You're off.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Thanks to all of you, Vicky, Patricia. Thank you to Francesca and to Giovanni for a really fascinating afternoon. We've just really enjoyed. You've taken us from inspiration to empirical studies, to conceptual studies, to knowledge building in the community. So it's been quite remarkable, and it's been just lovely to hear a little bit more about the LCT group in Latin America. So just before just say really big thank you to all of you, and just carry on and carry on that great work that you're doing. Anybody who is not on the LCT email forum, Penny very kindly put a link in the chat right at I think it was the first message. So just, if you're wanting to join that email forum, do so there. Otherwise, the only other news that I've got is that our plans for LCT 5 are coming on beautifully. And if you need early confirmation letters for funding or for visas, please, we are doing another round of abstract submissions this week, and then again in July. So everything you need is on lctconferences.com. And I'm putting that in the chat, where you submit all the information you need. So just do go and have a look. And it would just be wonderful to have many of you meet up in person, not in the Zoom space. So thank you very much, everybody. And the next roundtable 2 weeks time. Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you,
Take care.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.